Then it was quiet. Yeah, it looks amazing. Okay, welcome everybody at Talks About Architecture. My name is Robert Jan de Kort. I would like to welcome you all tonight here at Bahnhof, and especially Francesca Torzo from Genoa, who is coming to speak about her architecture tonight. Yeah, it's really exciting to be here on this new space for us as well, Bahnhof. And yeah, it's really a remarkable space. If I look around me, I see a lot of amazing artworks. And we are actually in in an industrial building, which is a little bit hidden inside of the center of Rotterdam. So yeah, tonight we get to know Francesca Torzo, but also this place Bahnhof. We started programming this new lecture series together with a new board of curators. Max Hart-Nibrig, Justin Agin, Sophie van Brunschot, Philippe de Klerk, and myself. And we were thinking who to invite tonight. And in that conversation that we had, a lot of names, of course, arose. But then all of a sudden we started speaking about Francesca Torzo, and we were really immediately enthusiastic about the idea that she would come to Rotterdam to lecture. And it had something to do with the fact that Philippe visited her art center in Hasselt earlier, and that Justin is in the Oase, an editor for Oase, and he knew that she was also working on an upcoming issue of Oase. She was writing. We knew that she was teaching, but we didn't know much. It was also the conclusion that we knew little about her, but we were very curious. And I think in a sort of media-dominated world, where architects and architecture firms are constantly broadcasting their projects, what they are working on, their ideas, that we are really aware of what architecture firms are doing all the time. And I think this is totally different for Francesca, because she doesn't do that, and then it looks like that somebody isn't present. So that sparkled this combination of curiosity and not knowing a lot, made us interested to invite her and ask if she would be interested to come. And we had this wonderful conversation on forehand by video calling. And what turns out is that she has really outspoken ideas about architecture, the architecture profession, and its relation towards society, and in a really sensitive, honest way. And after this conversation, we knew a little bit more, but we were even more curious, and also to continue this conversation tonight. So we really are looking forward to having this lecture. So that was the perfect time now to give the stage to Francesca Torzo, all the way from Genoa, and so we can sit down and listen to her talk about architecture. Francesca, the floor is yours.
Technology, and it's working. Very good teacher. And I am also a shy person, so I will get dry in my mouth. I will drink water, hope it will not disturb you. And indeed, I have to thank Robert and Sophie and all the team of talks, because I find it remarkable that there is a commitment in everyday life when people have profession to make time to create a space where other people can gather to share questions. And I'm not doing that. I'm here invited as a guest and I'm not giving that time of mine. I'm just drowning into the practice. So today I'm here thankful and also quite intimidated by the amount of people. But the idea was to continue the conversation we started together via this Zoom meeting. So I'm not going to present thoroughly one or the other project. I'm going to share reflections and questions through a handful of projects. And the Speak Memory is the beautiful title by a collection of essays by Vladimir Nabokov, published in 1951. No, okay. And this is a beautiful fresco from, yes, it's my finger. Yes. And then I don't like the stripe, so we go out, but we can do everything. Look how peaceful we saw it all. And there we are. So Vladimir Nabokov collected these essays, and this title was Speak Memory. And it is fascinating because memory normally we associate to something still. We look backwards, but the representation in classical iconography was a woman with a mirror, walking straight, but with a mirror. So memory is always embedded in mythology and classic culture with life. And I'm interested in this controversial relation between traditions, plural, and modernities. I believe, because it's what I live, that the history of humanity is a continuous body that hosts contradictions and ambivalencies where endings and beginnings coexist. Often it has been named for centuries that the Middle Age was a dark age, while for the richness of sources of coal and metals, it was literally the base ground of Renaissance. And they were experimenting with sailing, with ships, with pigments, with all sorts of metals. So not at all a dark age. In fact, Yourcenar also writes the Opera al Nero, that I know the title in Italian. Apologies for that. So I'm going to invite you to look backwards and forwards. So can we really draw a line between the past, the present, and the future? Another historian, Mark Bloch, that was a wonderful writer that had a sad ending, but endings are also beginnings when there is something which to learn from. He was saying that he would prefer to use the term suggestion when there is need for a precise nuance of verbal tone. So what if we say allusion? The question is, how do we remember other places? We walk around in cities everywhere, and we speak about places with other people. We use names, but I visited a vaulted space that maybe, Madame, you have not seen, or I visited a room with thin columns or a lot of walls that the gentleman here has not seen, but we can share an understanding. Is that a rational understanding or is a deeper understanding? It's nothing really shamanic. It is how a blind people can have a notion of red. There is a deeper ground that is a sort of universal, even if it is ambivalent and precise, where we can talk, name, recognize, and share an understanding of spaces, but even their memories and recognize them, and so they become alive, even if we had all different experiences. And Menemen was suggesting now that it's about giving birth of our memories in someone else. So we're never alone. And all the work we do in our projects is precisely that, to reflect how we can be part of a longer history. But then is where it becomes, I think, interesting that there is no universal in terms of a language and a form or a figure. There is belonging to specificities that other people can recognize. It's a landscape. This is a photograph by Luigi Ghirri. It's a land, but it is paper with a postcard in the backdrop. But it expands. It can be on the sea, it can be in the mountain, but there is inhabiting the place with a sort of cosmopolitan urbanity. There is a man, a citizen, inhabiting this landscape, overlooking this landscape. And in Liguria, there is on the coast a strong sea. There are woods of oaks which run down very rapidly towards the sea. And there is a land that then is very steep, that was ocean, geological ocean that then sunk down and was pushed up again in rivers and started forming all these long arms getting to the sea, which is steep and not very rich in humus. So they built long walls to get a flat land rich of humus to cultivate. So it's an artifact, the supposed natural landscape. It's man-made, but it has reasons with the context. It is all a layering. We always start a project trying to understand what is the specificity of a place. It's not coinciding with the Genius Loci or Norbert Schulz, neither with the analog approach that I find in their translations to ideological from the first thoughts of Aldo Rossi. It is literally what did people make survive of the first settlements and the layering and growing on top of these settlements. In Liguria, we have quite an exceptional assignment, which is in property, this is the property, which is in between two hills, Punta dell'Aspera and Punta dell'Olmo, with a torrentious river that goes to the sea, and this is the Roman road, Via Aurelia. In this property, which was a marine hospice that was born from the Risorgimental utopia of a doctor from Bergamo that bought very cheap an expanse of lands and said, okay, I'm going to build a marine hospice and await here and fight with Garibaldi. And these buildings were built, the previous ones, in form of palazzi. And so when we were invited for this residential project, we thought that it was appropriate to propose a palazzo. But the property has the sea, has a river, it has hills which have an historical wood of oaks. So it's like a small encyclopedia of Ligurian landscape, and there we have been reflecting. This is a collage of the photograph of the context where we are also working with the land. This is the playgrounds of Sports Center. So we are busy with a restaurant on the shore, a residential project, which is Villa di Plinio, a palace, Borgo on the hills, and all the naturalization of the landscape with sport facilities, quickly in plan. This is the context in historical photographs. You see the steepness of the hills and also the roughness. It's very poor, very hard to cultivate the lands here. And these were those these marine hospices built in form of palace with a certain rudeness, so they're not really of great quality, but they have this cosmopolitan ambition, which is a timbre, a tone of un timbro of the cultural palaces, the civilization that Enrico Leggi was describing, where citizens were creating scenographies and transforming the topography existing to invent a theatrical scene to welcome and do business. We are now in the first real estate operation of Europe in the 16th century in Genova with Strada Nuova, all the palaces that Rubens went surveying and then diffused around a typology. I wanted to make a palazzo. So this palazzo learns and grows on this civilization of palaces, which is the way that the citizens of Genova through centuries chose to stand and inhabit in front of the coast, inventing a scenography, so presenting a belvedere, building the palace on more floor with a great public space, and then a backside scenography with a garden. The program is very demanding. It is 9,000 square meter, but we had to be very small in a sort of a cube, 60 by 60, only emerging 4 floors. And so we started studying the element of this persistent rhythm that defines urbanity, the enfilade of columns and pilasters. And we started studying a structure that is a research on the new ferrocemento by Peruggi Nervi, because we are in marine context, where we have a structure of pillars of metal, only 110 millimeter, but basically it is a steel structure with a core going 60 by 60 millimeter and then slimming up till 54, just dressed with concrete. But why? So that we could have this rearrangement of pillars at every floor to allow another way of living, not strict with the classical enfilade of rooms from the classical grammar of architecture, but disposed more open. The expression is of a palazzo, a persistent rhythm of mineral vertical elements, which is articulating a body that has points of central axiality, asymmetry, always in a point, but then allows a exception. Here we have the symmetry in this point and then develops, which is somehow very congruent or consonant, as Varazze would say, with classicism. Here we have the central axis, but then it grows on the wings, and this is the other side. Symmetry, and then it grows. Here we have 2 floors on the ground of parking. We have piano nobile to development and crowning, and this is the public belvedere. This is Via Aurelia, down here. This palazzo, though, it's not a classical palazzo you could draw like from fantasy with the geometry, which is just squared. The idea of a plan like Palladio, or if we take Pier Paolo Rubens, the real of architecture is always adjusting with a site and thinking wisely. So at the end develops as a reflection on landscape and adjusting on the context. What is landscape? There was Carl Friedrich Schinkel that with splendid watercolors was drawing and painting the words that Plinio, the younger, was using to describe to his buddy, his friend Domizio Apollinare, of his beautiful house. No drawing. Plinio made no drawing, but he was telling a story. This narrative then Carl Schinkel, Friedrich Schinkel, developed into a fantasy drawings of a villa. And this is Villa di Plinio, Villa Laurentina, but it is a fantasy. But it is enormously fascinating because if you walk through, you discover that this experience of landscape is a sort of forgetfulness and rediscovery of a real. So let's imagine that we enter here and we have an enfilade, and then we are getting the light only on one side. And the landscape, which is this garden, presents as a small scene, a garden with not much perspective, and it is always framed. Then we pass and we have to turn, and it's for a service. We arrive to a corner in this room, which is a belvedere in itself, a long terrace overlooking a space that accompanies the interior space. But then again, we go in a very narrow space where it's dominating the presence of the windows and the rhythm, so it's like being outdoor. Same window, once we could be in a terrace. Moment after, we are in a portico or in a loggia, and then we have to change perspective. This for me is an experience of landscape, where landscape also in Palladio was on one side painting an imagery of the landscape outside, on the other was to have a order, orientation of the landscape, a governance. So also Plinio, in that sense, our Villa di Plinio, because the name of the project is an homage to Schinkel, searches for relation with a much wider landscape. Here we have the sea, and we have the terrace of the palazzo. On this side, we have all the valley of the river, which goes really very deep, a very deep perspective. And here we have the backdrop of an immense scenography, like in Sadanova, some of you loves and knows Rubens or has been to Genova. And then we have here stitching with the context of the existing wood. You can see very briefly the plans because we're not going too much in detail. So you see here the Piano Nobile, which is a public floor with swimming pool, garden, spa, which is taking all this space. In front, public restaurant, and then here apartments. All the upper floor, second floor, and attico are also apartments. This is well, exceptional, clearly. And in section, you can see the two underground parking places and how it is constructed, this complete artificial scenography of topography. And those are the parkings. Why for us was so important to build in not language, of a palazzo, because we wanted to be part of a longer length of time. All the city, what survived, what people made survive, are mostly historical buildings that are not demolished, but not only because they have the target, I'm under heritage protection, no, because that came in different times. Buildings survive because people can invest them in new meanings and inhabit them in different ways. So our palazzo has a demanding task of needing to be very slender in construction to make efficient the program, to be compact. And since we are in front of the sea, imagine we have only 25 millimeter of dress of concrete on the real steel structure. So that's quite exciting because we don't want cracks. There are insurances. The reference is Auguste Perret. But again, is the palazzo historical? Also, the living is historical. It is not about classical enfilade said before. It is this free promenade so that walking around you can discover the landscape. And so suddenly, also something which is maybe relevant detail, like the floor becomes very important, like the materiality of the pillars. Those are the tests of the concrete, which we look, it's a design mix with granite that then it is hammered and kept smooth on the borders so that it can be sharper. That you can see here closer. So this is going to be 15, no, this is going to be, here is 15 millimeters and here is 25, depending if it is on the lintel or on the pillar to have a hierarchy. This, you see the development of all the elevation because it's all prefab concrete. Here you see a glimpse to the experimental construction we're making where basically it's really a prefab construction. But can you imagine 8 floors with steel 60 by 60 going to 54 millimeter? I mean, it's less than your iPhones. It's exciting, no? And the beams put their nose for 15 millimeter. Also crazy exciting, but they're not crazy. It is that if you have a small landing, you comp and wrap it around, as you're seeing. These are like, I call them upside tables. Small landing, but when you compose the puzzle, becomes a block of steel. And makes sense again. Nothing invented. Really, well, now, yes, but all humans since millennia have been doing that. Think of wood. Think of sailors here that were mounting the trees of the boats, no? So we never invent anything. We just rediscover. But then the floor, it's important because in a palazzo, the floor is the carpet, is what making it noble. It's not making it representative. So you can make maybe very silent the walls, but the floor is what is holding all the territories of private and public. So again, Plinio, the construction of the landscapes, not only about the volume. It grows in the slenderness and precision expression of the pillar, in their rhythm. It also grows in this carpet of clay tiles. In reality, they are clinker, but they don't have sand. So when they're baked, they don't have any glitter. They are matte. And they are 105 millimeter per 23. So they were teeny tiny. We are back in a sort of antique time of the mosaics of clay. Can we do it? Yes, we can produce it industrially. We can sew bricks. We have diamond saws, which are mechanized and industrialized. Splendid. So we can make a lot of 1,000 square meters of this carpet. And it is a carpet because the module of the tiles does not fit exactly. It's not that the tile descends from the pillar. It is the other way around. They have their story, as also happened in historical architecture since millennia. And so we get joints, which is the breath we have to adjust things. But oh, mamma mia, sorry, but they also create hierarchies and give a scale in spaces within the apartment. Just because we made the mistake that we didn't make the tile from the module. I'm joking, but this is everywhere in Genova. It is wonderful that you have all these cities that give you places where you can find home, and we're trying to learn from them. I apologize for the poorness of the image of the render. We hate renders. We are just very overloaded by work, and we don't always succeed in making what the models would like to do. And this is going to be all the gardens of the apartments, but then we have these labyrinths within the new building, which is where you meet rosemary and lavender. And then you have these terraces overlooking the sea. And we are planting pomegranate and corbezzolo. And this is the palazzo overlooking the sea. But again, isn't this a distant dialogue? Paris in France, the palaces of Genova. How is history? In Genova, there is a beautiful palace, which is Palazzo Lomellino, that has made the gift to the city that you walk through a vestibule. There were always open door. You enter a court, and then you're welcomed by a grotto. It's a fountain. And there is this wonderful sculpture. And when we thought about making, asked to make this restaurant on the shore, you have to imagine that there the coast, the rock, the stone, the natural stone existing is like natural concrete because it is this sunk ocean that we emerged and we merged through rivers. So it is sedimentary, but with such forces that it's really natural concrete. I wanted to be part of that landscape like it was a grotto carved in the natural stone. Then, of course, we had to make that. And we don't want to mine something existing, we want to reinvent. So these were the first sketches of the grotto, just a terrace from where you can look the sea, and under some niches of shadow where each person can have a place in front of the sea. But from Via Aurelia, the Roman road, which is normally, it is like the daily habit, ritual of people. All people go hand in hand walking on the street. You see also teenagers going there to tell their stories. And it's nice that they all can always see the sea, even if they don't want to stop by and have a drink, because maybe they're busy or they have a bad day. And so from the street, the public street, it's always visible, the sea. This is the section. That here would be Via Aurelia, the low wall, terrace, and then all this theme of the pots, so that it would be a grotto, the artificium of a ruin built today. But the structure is very slender, even if it looks very massive. The pillar is massive, but in order to allow that in the beams we can host all the technique, so we don't see anything, but still it's accessible. We have a reinforcement bar of 25 millimeter, so it is so, which means that has to be prefolded, preformed, and then we have very tiny bars of 6 millimeter, which is normally is a great headache for workers because they go around 8 and 10 and 12, but 6 is annoying because it's a lot of tying up. But it's possible, so it's like a leaf. Differentiate the elements of the structure so that you can, at the end, take away effort in perception and let people build up their own memories. These were the first collage we made where we just wish to have this layered concrete where you have your spot to overlook the sea, also in winter, because in winter the sea is beautiful. And of course, we looked at the Pavilion Venezuela by Carlos Scarpa, which is a poor bad concrete. In Italian, they say that it bleeds. So it is literally, apologies, chef, I breathed in the microphone. You have stone on stone, but that's precisely the beauty. So we have been trying to learn how can we tune with the contact. We've been measuring all the layers, sedimentation of the rivers. We have been looking around 30 kilometers for all the stones, which are the same stones, in fact, which are beautiful blue, gray, green. And we have been checking the size, and I'm very sorry that this is invisible, but I can maybe draw it with this. We have been tracing all the diameter, dominant diameters per fascia strip of the stone, not to do the same, but to be belonging to that. We've been checking which would be horizons in the building so that it makes sense for living and domestic landscape and also for the construction. Here you see it applied in the elevation. Those are the stones, and this is what is the natural stone in place. So it's not going to be a fake. It is a artifact, a man-made artifact. But for us, it's very important to be non-loud so that people can not notice us. It is this building, which has here the underpassage of Aurelia to resolve an hydraulic risk. It expands till here with a ramp, a public ramp, because the beach is public, to reach the public beach for disabled or people with fragile knees or pregnant women, you don't know, someone with a child. But the nice thing is that it makes really a landscape which is almost taking all the embrace of the sea. And then we see there the Borgo. The restaurant, the model, here I go quick, the view from Aurelia, the top view. So this is a garden, which is all of sorbus. So this smaller grain macchia, which is a little bit making smaller, 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 more you go to the sea, the oak tree, so becomes tinier. And here the terraces with all the pots or with American wines that are falling down, so they can be there also as a coral at, when they're naked from the red leaves. And a small bar down here, and then simply the bar, terrace, restaurant, kitchen, and staircase. And this is a technical floor, which is asking all this endeavor, because then the precision of this building is of tolerance is 3 millimeters in concrete. It is tough. So we need to make everything very precise. With molds, I need to control the tolerance. This is the staircase, but it's not fictional. The handrail is collaborated with the structure, because it is clear that in Italy, the horizontal load for the handrail is the highest of Europe, more even than Switzerland, 200 kilos. Yes. Madame is impressed. I also was impressed. And so this one is a bar which is connected with reinforcement of the prefab trade. No, the trade is this one. That one is the horizontal, the step, which is solidal with the reinforcement with the trade, which is connected to the structural wall. So like the structure makes all this connected with this like a T, and then fixed to the wall. This is a view from under with a skylight, and then you are in the restaurant. And to see the sea. Outside, the showers. But uphill, we were faced with another subject, which was this. If you have 49 apartments and you are around of 20,000 cubic meters, and you are on a hill where there were three big buildings that had to be demolished because they were kind of great misunderstanding of real estate, of Italgas, a wrong operation. But how do you do today to place in a historical wood 20,000 cubic meters, making sense with residential program? And so we thought to learn precisely from all the popular settling on the hills of Genova, so the Borgo, and from Grosso Palace. Why? We believe that what we do has not consequences only now. The projects, buildings are born from a chance, money availability, an assignment, so a client which is placing a commission, but they need to have meaning for when we are dead, so people can use them. They not end up with the assignment. The assignment is a chance, the money as well, but what is this going to be? And so I wish that it would be like an archaeology for the future. If you visit archaeological places like Pompeii or Colano, you find that there is a relation between indoor rooms and outdoor rooms. The street, the courtyard, the room, another courtyard, the room, and then the square. And all of those are somehow connected and have an harmonious relation, which is of this continuous continuity. And this is a model of the first draft of the project, where these are the common, the bigger squares, outdoor squares, and then these are the rooms of the apartment. These are the terraces, but inside there is a kind of an indoor courtyard in the room. Everything started from here. So you have entrance, day bathroom, kitchen, the courtyard, indoor, covered of the apartment, living, overlooking living, but could be another bedroom, master bedroom with bathroom, and another bedroom with bathroom. And if you combine this one typology, you have this. Moving it on the existing topography, so not invented by us, it's topography that makes it eloquent. That is an important reflection for us, that what exists helps us to make something that has more chances maybe to be part of others' life in the future when we're gone. It's only one typology. This was the first draft. Important was this parcours of all these thresholds of public, semi-public, private, so that independently from the present definition of territory, it is open for interpretation in the future, where you move a door, doesn't fall the world, but the bones of spaces, they are important. And these are these thresholds which mark the entrances. And this is the landscape of the gardens, because also plants have a long life, sometimes much longer than us. Recently, we're looking planet Earth and learning a lot about that. This is the model. So you see the view towards the sea. It is developed on 3 floors and only one on 4 floors. And it is part of all the historical villages. Here you see closer to Paris, but I think I can go fast, otherwise I'm going to get you bored. This is the general plan, how it is then translated. Is a project that we are going to build, and is the elevation. But is this which is moving along the topography? So we are digging for only for the parking on the ground 1 floor. We are digging somewhere a meter. So we are literally placed on the existing topography, which is meandering. And it exists somehow already all around. This is really nearby. This I discovered after, when I found a book in a flea market. I thought, this is a fantastic book. It was this documentary, when we spoke before with Max, how important it is to make documentaries. Now I continue thinking that, to register what exists and learn from it, and also give legacy to who comes after. But it is different. All these are construction of big gigantic bricks of concrete, which are with horizontal reinforcement and some points of vertical, so that the slabs do not flip. And it is on, as I said, on 2 floors, and all they're laid with lime mortar. So of course there is an echo of leathern, so that all the expression of this brick that has to do in this sand color, like with the Palace of Plinio, and also the restaurant with the natural stone, the stones are the same. Also, the mixed design is similar. The treatment has some variation. One, it is hammered with a hammer. Another, it is water jet. This one is going to be also water jetted to be a little more rough, but here there is also lime mortar. So we're getting closer when we have more shades, a smaller grain of shade from the trees of the woods. And this is a drawing by Petra. Here you see for all the levels, so it seems a mountain, it is, and this is the ensemble. The project of the gardens is a project of trees. So we are making with the landscape designers all a study of how this will be in 10, 30, 50, 100 years. Because we are planting oaks, we are planting Magnolia grandiflora, we are planting archers. We're not planting bushes in the gardens. And this is part of the law of who is going to buy. So they're not allowed to change the tree. Or they can make a proposal that has to be assessed, because this part of landscape belongs to the public, even if it's going to be private property. That is an important statement. You see it growing. And in all these streets that you see appearing, they also have names. They have odonymics. Don't know what is the name in Dutch for odonymic. Salto, piazzetta, passo, salita, all the weg, straat we have here. Weg, straat, they're different. Brug. Everywhere we have a place we recognize. Also in Genoa, you have it here everywhere. And so we also named all the places. But how can we name them? Because they're believable, recognizable. How is a brook? How is a weg? How is a straat? They're different, no? There are specificities, but they don't nail a figure, a face. They can be diverse, but they are recognizable. That's enormously fascinating for us. This is the wood, the context. So this is where is going to be this borgo. And some images, the colors, we had some work to do in adjustment of the colors, so it's a bit too green. I apologize, but otherwise the drawings were invisible. Here you can see the layering of the mortar, because there are some lines where there are bars of reinforcement of 16 millimeter and not the single 6 millimeter. The mortar is lime mortar. This construction again started from trying to see how can we be of kindred spirit with the vernacular unknown architecture. There is an authorial wisdom that whispers a sensibility and a specificity for place without prescribing forms. And it is oral architecture, the rural architecture in Genova, which is made of rocks that have some lines of shadow. But the point is not to aestheticize what we see from the past, how to translate it. How can we be tuning in an expression without any quote and being genuine, believable in this present time with our tools, which are industrialized. We are an industrialized epoch. There is, of course, the craft, but we are industrialized in all our production mostly. But we can craft the industrial production. That, I think, is the challenge of present time. Perception. Another way of facing the subject or the question, the big theme, is how does our mind experience spaces? Our mind seems to be hungry, that we continuously gather, collect inputs from our senses, but our mind very rapidly, Sullivan in kindergarten chats will say, like a fastest agency of the universe, our mind, recombines recombines them in ways that go to a unity. How is it that a dream feels real when it's not real? How is it that we can remember? How we can see that we can remember something that's not yet happened? But I mean, not fictioning, really. If you think to your own experience, how many times you recognize, you see a glimpse of a corner, but you complete the picture. Your brain assumes that there is also another part of curtain. So our head continuously tends to combine a whole. Just that the whole is beautiful, the mind. The whole is not static, so cannot be fixed. So it continuously changes. And Aldo Rossi was saying that this is beautiful. The merging of relations among things, more than the things themselves, poses new meanings. And that was also what Alberti was saying, that there is harmony, beauty, and harmony, therefore beauty, lies in the infinite recombination of very simple things. Infinite, which is what our brain does every day. And when we, at the time I was really alone when I began Z33 the competition, but then the team grew. And there it really started from observing and tracing. This was a drawing for a proposal for the outdoor street. I had no assignment for the street. I just could not think about it because all the city starts from a ground on which it grows. Soft land, hard land, how to move the topography. And Hasselt, I started making small surveys of urban moments, the courtyard, the street, but also to see how the stones were drawing them, to gather experience and understand. Because one thing is to collect an experience as a tourist, but in our profession, if we do not understand, we don't, as in your practice of teaching, now also, if you don't understand, you get the tools, you cannot write a novel, you cannot play a song, you cannot make a building, no, if you don't understand how space is going to be. And those are all, Hasselt is a medieval city, which is crossed by all these very deep passages, opening into courtyards. So you have a lot of shortcuts, urban shortcuts that have a representation. And the Begainhof, where we built Z33, so this Begainhof of Hasselt, and these are the Begainhof houses that survived from the bombing. These are the ruins of the church. This is a gin museum which was added in the 18th century, and these were added in the late 1950s. No, sorry, this is 1970s, while this is the museum that was from the 1958, which is quite similar from the building in front of where we ate. So this kind of tender modernism that still was with one hand in classicism and the other hand with industrial windows, and tuning them together. And here, if you see all the history of the Begainhof, the citizens of Hasselt always preserved the space of the Begainhof, even if they place a factory of gin, even if they place a museum. So they were changing program. They were growing, they were demolishing, they buried a river. They were not doing anything. It was not preservation, but they preserved the space. So in that sense, for us, it was important to carry on this sort of phoneme of the city. If they protected for centuries this space, we also shall keep it, because that's something where people can grow other lives and meanings, if it happens so far. What is the reason to contradict that? And the other is that all these Begainhof houses, like also the existing museum from 1958, have shared a urban portamento, having all an enclosed facade towards the street and a partiture, a filigree of windows opening towards the interior. And also in that sense, we thought that it's not only a matter of placing a volume that fits the whole, or it has to be the building. it is relevant that there is a shared ground so that the whole beguinage can be recognizable even if unawarely. Again, the theme of perception. How much do we need to recognize something and have a continuity with that? So it is a wall. It is a wall with openings where there is a income hall patio and there is another patio for delivery and there is a teeny tiny window, no glass, just openings. Because all this pacing, this size of light and shadow is already there in the city, and we just develop this. I don't know how to call it. Levi Strauss was talking about mythem, now speaking about myths and folk stories. I call it phoneme of a city, something that is there that everybody can see, that makes a specificity of a place, but it's not about form, figure, language. It is in the relations that people can share, recognize, and use again. That is the back facade with the filigree is a new building, which is different proportion from the beguinage houses from the 18th century, and it is also different in proportion from the Fleury 58. But it is the same story, and is a wall or a window? Is it built or painted? And it's always about the double face of the spaces. The interior of the building, as it is a mosaic tile extension building, also the interior spaces were all an ensemble of rooms that had somehow a memory of an urban wandering, but a wandering in an historical city where you encounter from time to time outdoor spaces. And then the garden becomes like a trompe-l'œil, a figuration in the inside. Quickly we see the plants. So there is basically a plan, a ground floor plan, and a secret plan for the staff, offices, typical in Parisian palaces. So culture moves between a country and the other, and then another public floor for the visitors. The existing wing has 2 floors, and so also ours. But the experience is really of specific rooms that had names, Petit Chambre, Grand Chambre, Les Lacs. Then we have the Brug, in fact. We had the Steg, so the alley, and the people, the workers, the builders were calling this the Steg. The workers now called it the Steg. The visitors call it the Steg because it just makes sense. It's street, even if it is something different. If you go to around and about, and you keep telling to someone, I went to a place which was like a sky, or I went to a place that was a bridge. It has a staircase and there is a passage. Now, functionally, what does it do? But that's not enough for spaces. We always cling on stories, and that's how we speak with other people. At least that's what we are interested in, but also what we observe happens. And there is also all a dialogue because we had to make an extension of a building, but we wanted to be in dialogue with the existing one without copying it. So you keep on having a continuous reappearance of the moments, spatial moments of the existing building, but also moments of other places. Is it so different meandering here from a villa of Palladio? Not really, because that's about the change of light and the proportion of the rooms. Or when you encounter the enfilade and you meet a garden. And the gardens are miniatures, where the ground is not always ground, where you put your feet. Sometimes the ground is where you put your elbow, so it can accompany the mise en scène. Frames, thresholds, define relations among spaces, and spaces, rinte, are thresholds among other spaces in themselves, no? And in the province of Hanoi, we were invited to make the project for a dance school, and everything started from studying a pillar because that was the element that allowed us to create a rhythm and the filigrees for the scenes of scenographies for a dance school that had everywhere a potential stage with no backside. All could be a front. The pillar also interpreted some measures of shade and size of the tiles of this existing building, because in the province of Anhui, you will see later, the tiles are curved and they are of very dark clay baked, and so they are rhythm. I go faster because I see I'm going to. The main point of this rhythm of pillars, which is making these filigrees that define the potential front and back of dancing performances, that is the back, in reality integrates to all a culture of scenes and fancies of an ancestral hall. An ancestral hall is not a religious place. It is a secular civic reference place that have spirituality, but there are no religious rituals. There is here a water pond that you have to pass because you cannot go straight into a place that has such spirituality. You have to move along, but you could dance on that water pond. And this is ancestral theme. Those were existing buildings just for rural work that are beautifully integrated and preserved. And all our project was to implement this part. So again, amplifying this existing trace of fancies and scenographies. You see the plan, but, and here you see the tracing of the lines. I was before with thresholds and rooms and spaces. It is it's a beautiful engraving of a tombal stone from China, uh, which is representing a village. And this ancestor ensemble, which inside the temple hall, is at the border of this village of Anhui province, which is at the feet of the Yellow Mountain. And we wish to have the same polyhedrality of theater scenes, but for dance, so that rehearsing, when we're in COVID, we will see videos of the Royal Ballet Academy rehearsing on the platforms, no? On the Thames, splendid in the backyard. So that was a bit the idea. But this theme of thresholds is not something of the plan. It is spatial. So you have a real threshold, the entrance, that then is multiplied in this rhythm of the pillar. That's why the pillar was the essence of the project. Because through the pillar, its repetition, its proportion, you create a depth of shadow to then encounter a surface with a backdrop. And then again, it opens with a wall and other thresholds. And then suddenly you have spaces. Space is defined not by walls, but the air in between them and how you approach them. And it's not different from the offices and how you find all then the courtyards of the whole village. All the village as the ancestral hall is a artifact to collect water. Gigantic services to drive the water and collect it to then cultivate. This is a landscape, rural landscape open. The sorry, I've been going very fast now. So this is the village. In another context, because I wanted to provoke what is a threshold. I'm fighting figures. I'm fighting forms to freshen up and look at least what we do, no, and to share that as a conversation, not pretending it has to be the point of view, but the only thing I can do is to share that and converse maybe later about that. For us, it's very important to search for the relations among things. What is the essence of the spatial relations that people can recognize and build on them? To recognize these primary relations that can make you be part of a longer history and that change meaning but are still recognizable. That's something also that I'm not inventing, was the position of Italian architects in the 50s when CM died. And I'm interested in that position, how you relate to history in a live way and critical way, but making it alive, time present, for future, for when we're gone. In the Guilin, which is lime karsic, it is a fable landscape of karsic lime peaks eroded by wind and by yeah, mostly by wind and waters. You have all these peaks that create a scenography, and along the Yangshuo, which is the river moving through, all the banks are crowded by woods of bamboo. They're crowded by wood of bamboos, and there are from time to time there are some small constructions of wood that raise a bit above the bamboo, and they were meant as a signal of transferring information from curve to curve, or to say danger, or to gather for social representation. Sometimes also teachers use them. And in this context, we were invited to make a proposition for a library pavilion that would be built by a prominent client having a luxury hotel in this area. So as a place that could welcome VIPs, which were mostly actors and film directors of China, but using that to give to the village down here a library where the teacher could go and read the books to the children, and in that way oblige municipality to keep clean this walk in the wood of bamboo for the children. So remarkable client. And here the tide is 3 meters, the flood. So it means that big part can sink. We made for this reason a pavilion which has a core, which is a staircase, but also the base is in concrete so that it is robust enough to resist and support the flood, and then it develops into construction of bamboo. The ground floor is cryptoporticus, so that the children could play and stay alone and have their time surrounded by the bamboo, but in a safe place. And at the upper floor, where you reach with the staircase, there is the library with the benches where the teacher would read, because the ritual is so that they gather around. And so all the backdrop of the facade of the bamboo was for the books, with a terrace around. And then you could walk up to have just a small belvedere for a few people. And the flood, as said, can reach this point. The construction is concrete, cryptoporticus, the basement and the staircase core, and the rest is in bamboo. Tainted blue. Traditionally, they use prune juice to taint bamboo, because bamboo is a kind of superhero material. It is only scared of nails, the vertical fibers, and insects. So dyeing with prune juice keep away the insects and not the nail in general vertically, because then it is compromises structural stability. But it is a material that has no license to be a construction material. It can only be for scaffoldings. So we made a scaffolding construction. And in principle, it is true. And this was just a model to study how to tie it, because it was to be built on like the formworks to make the boats, that you have a form and you mount there the bamboo, and then you would have elements that you could install on the concrete structure. And this was because it was for us very important to be somehow not fighting the shadows that were present in the wood of bamboo and osmanthus, and also the faults of the context. Then it's not that we are copying the shape of a stone. That would be absolutely absurd, we think. But it was important to have a minuscule gradient so that it's a curve that the straight lines would be turned into curves to dim the reflection of shadows and lights. This is the construction, so the small piece of wood are where you mount. I missed, I'm sorry, there was one that I wanted to show. I missed a slide. But we really met a family there in Yangshuo, where we started making a prototype. And then there was COVID. And it is in pausa, and now we have too much work, so we'll see when it will start again. But the question related to this perception, our interest is to work in continuity with what exists, but in a critical way. And we are interested in weaving this continuity based on the primary relation among spaces. There was Frank Olbin and Frank Helg that in 1959, which was really the year when Siam ended for a irresolvable conflict, they were saying it's important to sieve the permanencies from the variables. And variables are all those costumes that change with society and rituals. Societies continually are changing, but there are some things which are permanent, and how to understand which these are. And the call for which is this question, no? How can there be a present past? What they were posing, which is our interest. And I'm not, this can only be read. Eliot is unreachable, he's a poet. I'm going to talk under Eliot. But the core question is that of emancipating from the idea that there is an ideology or determined cultural rhetoric that has to be served, and maybe accept that cultures, different cultures coexist and contradict each other, and they change. And that is the richness of our world, of humanity. That contradictions and ambivalences can exist, but yet we can share. And so how do we share understandings, meanings, experiences? How is it possible that we say bridge, ponte, brug, and it rings a bell to each one of us? Even if there are infinite bridges. But there are some bridges, more bridges than others, and they're better normally. And it's not about the function. So how do we proceed after the cries of modern movement? It's a big dilemma. No? That I think is the great question of our time, together with the fact that we are in a world that is drastically changing. And it's a challenge to try to ask ourselves what's really important. No? What's really important? Dignity is so important. Memory is so important. Knowledge is so important. How is it that in the wars, first thing that happens, they burn down the libraries? I'm getting shivers, no? Is that we need to have history, but not to be dottori, to be people that are not lonely in the universe, I believe. So we were invited to make a stone pavilion for a fair where they sell stone. And the title, because there was a theme, was time. And we thought it was interesting to make a small pavilion, which was a stereotomic construction of stone with no mortar and no metal hinges, just drawing the stones, thinking the weight that a man can hold, and doing as another time that you make a wood construction inside, you place a stone, and then you take away the construction, which is very light. And all these pieces could be done so because we are in, it was done in 2022, I think. Now we are 2024 because we have 5-axis machine. We have the fantastic CNC. So we can do some job that in centuries ago would have taken a length of time. It was estimated in not even 3 weeks, all, which is very good. But is it important just the divertissement on experimenting this technique, which is not even new, of stereotomy, just using a new tool, which is 5-axis CNC? Not really. All the theme was to have a stone pavilion as a tent. We wished to make a tent because we wished that after the end of the exhibition, this tent could go in Castelvecchio in Verona, could find home. And the tent is born from the first sketches of Carlo Scarpa when he was making studies on the base for Cancan della Scala that kind of lost his tomb. So it was needed for a home for his tomb. And this was in form of a tent. The pedestal of the statue of Can Grande, his tomb, the base was a tent. So we made this tent, but how do you make the lintel of a tent? Who knows? It has been done. It was done in the Dome of Prato, and it is a lintel that was portrayed by John Ruskin in The Lamp of Truth, in the Seven Lamps. And it is a stone block. You see the lintel, which is alternated green marble and white marble. And it is an ensemble of stone blocks which are carved in that way that their load blocks them. And it exists there now. This is a picture last year. So the question that Ruskin poses is, are logic and necessity sufficient matters for building? And the left open answer, I fully agree, no. Because there is need for dignity. And there is also need to celebrate our society. That's why it's so relevant what Talks is doing. Generosity of your time and also with ours. It's society is important, but without being present to your own society, where is society? It's not an abstract concept. It's normal people in the street, in the bus, in the tram, the bicycle. And so I've been trying to find a way that people could perceive this tiny pavilion as a tent. Doesn't matter if it is made of stone. And this is our stone for the lintel, which is in fact the same but different, but it's the same. This for us is primary relation. When you understand and learn. In Padova, it's you have the Roman city, you have the Venetian walls, and you have in between all a river. And here there is the Galileo Observatorium, and here the project was to try to give a front side to the river, how to reactivate it. It was in the 1000s when rivers were still like the backdrop of the city where people were throwing all the rubbish, at least in Italy. Now it's not so. Now they're all tidy and nice, even too made up, I would say. And there are an amazing series of hydraulic machines which were made to leave the river, so to function. So you have lifts, you pass jumps, so to live it and use it. And they were made beautifully in Pietradistria and Trachite with connection inland. And I wished to make an archive of these machines as a starting point for this actual operation of renewing the river. And I wished it to be in a dry stone construction where you connect. And this is a castle of cards of stone, where if you make, we made the load test together with your concept. This is my diploma thesis. So it's long ago, it's 2001. And it is stronger than reinforced concrete for a height of 11,75. And we did not check for earthquake. But it has a It's absolutely making sense under the point of view of Tectonic. But if you see this, I go backwards maybe. Apologize me. No, it's after. You see lower stones at the bottom and bigger stones up. Traditional construction of masonry says the opposite visually. Big stones down, small stones up, because you want the barycenter low. The mass has to be down, closer to the earth. Then you're stable. It is the same here, because being a castle of cards, as you can see here, all these walls are hollow with some cross elements. These are all the layers. I want to show it better. Okay, I draw it with it. There is here a cross one. So here a cross one, another cross one, and those are the brass elements. So you have more cross stones at the bottom, which means you have more mass at the bottom. So the barycenter is low. But the visual expression is the opposite. It was just an ensemble of rooms. But again, why making all of this? Just to be part of the landscape of the river of Padova. We're not interested in doing wonders of technique at all. Our wish is to be unnoticed in what exists, gracefully unnoticed, and hopefully not to damage the day of a person. Like in Sorano, this is a Tuscan village, which is in the center of Italy, which is all in tufa, so these are very porous stone. Too late? Okay, I rush up. I'm almost at the end. And it was also here, we just wanted to be, they carved the hill and then build the houses, so it became one amalgam and artifact, and the construction is a small house. So flowing, you see inside again, it is like a pavilion, a belvedere. I'm closing it very quickly. No, I don't know how to close it. I'm sorry, but this is Ercolano and this is Cadoro with Ghent and this is Z33. All the conversation is about skepticism towards forms and figures as abstract concept. We search for stories that have roots in what exists and that people have made survive. And we look for meaning in these stories. And then there is a lot of work to do to make it alive. And for me, it was very to arrive here with the metamorphoses, because the metamorphosis of Ovidio, where he describes all these stories of transformation, ladies that escape crazy gods and turn into waters and make rivers or trees. And Ovidio describes a lot of stories of all of us. He opens with a crazy punk Zeus, purple and red, very strong colors. It's splendid and powerful, and he has a character. He also writes about a desperate father-son that is deprived of his courage by his son, that then has a very sad end, and the father cries. So it's full of stories, but it's all a metamorphosis. And so we're interested in this fabulation in architecture, a mytheme of spaces, so that we can work on stories that exist and have survived, and they are genuine, and that people would not let go. And we think that stones carry all these stories, bricks, metal, glass, everything, potentially, but not every building. So I would advise the reading of the structural study of myth by Claude Lévi-Strauss. Thank you. I wrapped it up. I apologize if I went so long. I really wrapped it up very rapidly.
You can you can have some water. There's still time for that. Wow. Yeah. Thanks, firstly, for your inspiring story. What really stuck on me was the notion of that the whole is always changing. It could also have been said about this lecture, because yeah, we can go on for the entire night. And I think also the conversation that we had on forehand, I also had the idea that yeah, we stopped the conversation at some point, but we could easily have continued it. So I have the same feeling now. I will start with one small question, and then I will. I think there might be some questions from the audience. So I was thinking about skills, and I once had the opportunity to interview Peter Zumthor, and I know you collaborated or worked with him as well. And I asked him how he's sort of handling the different skill levels in his projects, and if there's sort of an end to the skill a project can get. And I'm having a little bit the same feeling with your work, which yeah, you show us let's say a tent, and you show us a project which is almost like a little city. And Zumthor mentioned that he said, I'm always on sitting in the room, and then I'm going from the room to the window outside. And so scale is never, for me, never a problem. So I was, or never an issue. So I was wondering, how do you work on all these skill levels, from the tiniest detail until the, let's say, the landscape skill? Are you also always right in the middle?
Yes, I think I don't function otherwise. Because if you start, I take the example of the Bishan dance school. It started from, it starts synchronically with a sense of the steps you have between work side inside the village and the small courtyard, but then also the sizes that the gaze can measure of the shadow and the light, together with in your hand a tile. And the tile is making the shadow of the roofs, but is also giving a sort of related measure to the roofs and to the opening in the roofs, plural. Then you have the pillar that oddly has some pillars are in wood, had a relation of size, also in threshold, with the tile, and that you see at the top of the walls, but you see also when you put your hand. And I cannot prescind, I cannot separate the one-to-one from the thousand. They are together because they nurture each other. So that's why I meant a lot of time is about observing and trying to understand what makes a specificity, the specific quality of a place. And it is understanding it is precisely to do not copy or quote in vain something. And other example is for Z33 we started from the brick because it was so important to find a way to be part of this landscape and scene of artifacts from different time and age, with different sizes of brick itself, size of joints, way of laying, keeping for the moment just aside the color, which is all another chapter, and the grain. And there was a neighboring building at the Vögel that needed another Vögel. So there had to be one. So you have to start from seeing and understanding how you want to differentiate or tune a dialogue. And that has to start with millimeters and decades.
And when do you know when to stop?
And that when it's built.
Okay, thank you. I will, let's see if there's any question in the audience. You can think about it. Oh, wow.
Hi, maybe too much of a personal question, I'm sorry. Why did you choose Genova as a place where you set up your office?
Accidentally. I arrived accidentally, but one thing I can add is that I was not able to go away because it's an interesting city, because it does not have any beauty like Florence or Padova or Verona, Palermo, Torino, but it is a very alive city, and it has incredibly alive topography, which means that it feels like if the city walks around you all the time, which I find beautiful. I think you too find it beautiful. And there is also that it's a city that combines various colors and substances of society, which are very melanged. It's not, we were yesterday in the historical center of Antwerp, which is quite defined in social character, and also, yes, somehow also the historical center of Padova. But in Genova, you have many more colors and traits of society together, and that is alive and feels healthy and beautiful. It's also a city that offers tolerance, but not in a very dignified way. It seems there is space for all lives. It's also a very hard city. It's not a sweetheart.
It's all qualities to find out.
Mm-hmm. You can work forever. It's like never ends. It's full of. It has an incredibly rich and inventive and eloquent urban structure. Incredibly sensitive and domestic, and also incredibly noble and representative and elegant. It's really surprising. I find still. I don't know if you want to know.
Want to add something
Because
about
August
Genoa?
also lives in Genova, so I was asking. That is from. I also love non-loud. I love elegance. I think elegance is a sign of respect, but not loud. Not. It's not about wealth. Elegance.
I was thinking about what you said about stitching with context.
Mm.
Is it always about that, um, or is it also, yeah? Can it also be something else? But it's because it sounded very fundamental to your
Context
work.
is fundamental,
Yeah.
yes. But it's very hard to speak about context because we had two exceptional minds and writers, Christian Oberschulz and Aldo Rossi, that are remarkable and have been opening ways of thinking. But I think that somehow the heritage is disguised. And so every time there is a refreshing cultural position, it's always reacting towards something. It doesn't have birth in glass vitrum, no? It is always to make a break with an established way of thinking or an hypothesis that is spread for a time, and then there is need for reaction towards that. But then it has to be re-questioned, rethought, developed, or rephrased. And for me, context is fundamental because I am highly disturbed by constructions and buildings that misconsider a place. I'm literally disturbed, like I walk away. I don't think I have to leave well, I'm fortunate that I cannot be forced to leave everything in life. I can choose. And I think that there is something very soothing in historical cities. Now we are in Rotterdam that had quite some bombing, but there is also history here for that. So I'm not excluding neither Rotterdam. It is soothing that there is also a certain degree of grace and calm backdrop for the lives that doesn't need hyper individuality of each artifact, even if we go in the time of Art Nouveau, when they were quite in need of making flourish a representation that had to be singular, still they had a shared ground, so they're not too demanding. And I think that that is what I wish to contribute to, in a way, being part of something which is there that is not um, the materialization of a concept or a cultural manifesto. I'm not interested in that. I don't read buildings ever as objects. I've never, never. Buildings for me are always part of a context, which is both material and immaterial. And that's not abstract, it's meaning just they are part of this tabulation and this culture that is longer than us, our life.
Yeah, I think, yeah, looking at it from that side is really needed in this time, I guess, because
I think it is.
yeah.
And it's also very it would be, I think it's important to also speak because I feel inadequate with the words. I'm um, not a critic, I'm not a writer, I'm an architect, somehow a technician, but I really take very seriously my work with joy, not seriously with drama, but it has consequences.
It shows. Yeah.
It has consequences. And context for me should start observing again what people have found worth not erasing. To understand what stays, because it stays. Or like if you ask people where they go on holiday, where do people go on holiday? Most of the times in Italy, isn't it?
Yes.
And I mean, doesn't matter that I'm Italian. It's that it's a place that has so much layers, and it is alive in its folds, and has both domesticity and nobility. So there are some things that for people are good, and I don't understand why we should not address our practice of architects to make spaces, buildings worth to be lived and last, because people like them, like to go there back again and again. And it's not just finished after the opening. That would be
Yeah,
so
and it's
sad.
it's very.
Like this
You
building
showed
is
you
fantastic.
showed us different ways
Fine.
of doing this in different contexts. So you showed us China, you showed us Belgium, and you showed us Italy, and in all these places you were looking for these signs
Yes,
to start a project, so to say.
that for me is the essence, in fact. And that reverberates at all the scales at the same time.
Thank you. One last question.
Thank you for the wonderful lecture and making us part of your world, beautiful world. I was wondering, how do you choose on which projects you're going to work? How do you choose what's going to be next? And so, yeah, how do you decide?
And
I
do you decide?
yeah, they come in the mail. It's literally. So I'm sorry. I try then to maybe give you another answer, because this is literally they come in the mail. So it's like it is a practice. So we live of that. And I had a very, very hard life, very hard. Now it goes better, fortunately. But it's 20 years of broken bones. No? And now it goes better, just to make it there is no fairy tale ever. But there are fables and there are folk stories which are genuine, I believe. I really love Karl Proppen fables, folk stories, like also Stravinsky, because I think that in that there is this non-authorial wisdom that I can believe in. And for the works, they arrive and many times struggle. For example, things we do not choose is to work with other architects for competition. We don't do that because we think it doesn't function. But we work with colleagues that have expertise where we are complementary. Like now we're in a competition with colleagues on heritage and this landscape designers. We really love engineers. So these are works we don't. It's easier for me to say what we don't do, no. So that we don't do. Other things we do not do are projects that we consider superficial. Like we have refused some work because we consider them superficial, just for we not understand why they were for. They were more for recognition, but we don't have understanding of that, so don't want to devote time to that. And we have not taken a few jobs because we literally had no capacity to have take care of them, because we are a small studio. We are not a mini studio. We are in total now with the two of us, me and August, in 9, and we barely can sustain the work we have to produce. And the work we have to produce, maybe that is interesting to elaborate, because often, like, continuously clients, builders are surprised by the amount of drawings we make, also from a very early stage. For us, our preliminary has already 1 to 10 drawings, and 1 to 1, because that comes mostly from me, because I'm very scared to let down. I'm very scared to to give a word I don't feel I can reach. So it comes down to earth to a notion of limits and also a notion of some line of concept I have in a way, but then everybody's free to define their own. For me, it's very difficult to commit to something if I don't check if it's feasible, literally. And a definitivo is a pre-execution, because then you also have to check the money. And it's not fine if you embark or drive a client to an adventure where he is all interested, but then the budget is not feasible. What do you do? So there has need to, I think it's very important to always keep in hands all these subjects, economy, the detail, the time, because we are responsible for a lot of people.
Thank you.
But it's very
Thank you
normal,
for your
I say.
for your elaborate answer on your. I'm sorry. I think. Or
I thought the first one was too silly. So
it was so nice that after 27 years you are back in Rotterdam.
27, yeah.
I'm sorry to to stop you for the second time this evening, but it was very nice to have you back in Rotterdam after 27 years, and we will broadcast your email address around the city for developers and clients who are challenged to do a project with you, because I'm also very curious how it would be if you were doing a project in Rotterdam, what you would find, what you would. So we will help you.
It's a time of wishes because we would love to do social housing because we never got the chance. Because we lose competitions apart Z33. We would really love to do social housing.
So maybe after 27 years, Rotterdam would also have the universe, Francesca Torzo universe. Francesca, thank you for your lecture. We will talk during the drinks, a more informal way. Yeah, I want to thank the audience for. Sorry. Yeah, the drinks are downstairs. I would also want to thank everybody for attending tonight to the lecture, and hoping to see everybody back next week on same place, same time for the lecture by Fabel Architekten. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now